guys, and welcome to the first episode of Design and a Half. My first episode, for my first episode, I wanted to talk about something which is, from my point of view, really, really important for any type of designer, and that's communication. The importance of good communication cannot be overstated when we're talking about design, because it involves discussing with several types of people, interacting with designers, product owners, and so on and so forth. This is why I think communication is so important for absolutely any self-respecting designer out there. So as an outline, we're going to try and cover the importance of proper communication in design, as well as other disciplines, what problems good communication solves, what are the risks of not communicating properly, as well as some tips with regards to how to communicate better. Assertion, removing the ego, discussing about how every person that's involved into a conversation between two people is actually okay, setting up some expectation with regards to the motivation of each person that's involved in communication, focusing on commonalities instead of differences, negotiation, empathy, and critical thinking, and creating a type of psychological safety for the people that are involved in day-to-day communication, so that they can express themselves without having to be fearful of the other people involved, without having to be fearful that someone will cut them off, without being fearful that their idea is not going to be heard. And we're also going to be giving some examples of good communication in terms of some sort of role play, if you will. And at the end, I will try and give you some reading materials, which from my point of view are really, really good, and in establishing some patterns of great communications, as well as giving you some tips for this specific part. Okay, that being said, let's just jump right into it. So, why is proper communication important in design, as well as other jobs, if you will? Well, communication is important because it establishes a rule for the people that are involved in exchange of information. So if proper communication takes place, that means that the person who is sending a message is sending the proper message for the other person to receive on his own channel, and the message is decrypted as intended instead of misinterpreted in some other way. Okay, that being said, it also establishes intentions towards the outcome of the discussion. So when you're talking to someone, you're also setting the expectation of what you would like to receive after that discussion finishes or concludes. And it also relays information. So the purpose of communication in all types of disciplines is just to get information across between 2 points. One point being person A and the second point being person B. That's it. So what problems does good communication solve? Well, first of all, it limits the friction between people due to miscommunication. And what I mean by that is, say someone wants to say something to you, but it says it in a way that is, you just misinterpret it as being aggressive, for example, because of the tone and the mimic of that person, and that person actually just wants to compliment you, for example, but that person does it in a way that is to you aggressive. It's not okay. It makes you feel threatened. And your reaction to that is to be automatically defensive and try to jump at the other person, which is what usually happens in meetings when some person raises their voice just because they want to be sure they're heard by the whole group, and the rest of the people are taken back and feel a little bit threatened and don't really want to engage into that conversation, because they don't feel like they have something to contribute, because the other person dominates the discussion. That's kind of the idea here. Another good thing about good communication is that it avoids unmet expectations by communicating intention. So, first of all, whenever you communicate intention and you establish the rules of engagement for a particular type of communication, for example, you have a meeting. The proper way to do that, to conduct a meeting, is to set up expectations from the beginning. So why are we here? What's the purpose of this meeting? What do we want to discuss? Why are we gathered here? What's the outcome we expect out of this meeting? Do we want clarity? Do we want this? Do we want that? Whatever do we want? That needs to be set before the meeting actually takes place, because it sets the expectation for absolutely everybody involved in that meeting, and it avoids all sorts of side discussions and tracks that people generally tend to do whenever a particular topic is not necessarily had in mind and held. Which is why it's a good idea to always, when you're holding a meeting, it's a good idea for someone to act as a mediator for the whole parties involved, so that the discussion does not run out the door and just goes straight into heck knows where. It's not a good idea for that to happen. Okay, moving on. Another thing that is that good communication does is it fosters collaboration between people. And by that I mean that if two people are engaged into some sort of communication, like you have your colleague and she talks to you, or he talks to you, and they tell you, we need to solve this problem. The way they say it, as well as being receptive to your ideas and you being receptive to their ideas, means you're going to collaborate better in the long run. Why? Well, it's sort of like this, you're just creating a sort of contract between yourselves. If I give you something, you'll give me something, and if both of us get what we want out of that discussion, everybody's going to be happy, and collaboration is going to be better in the long run. That's kind of the idea here. Okay, so let's look a little bit about the risks of not communicating properly. First of all, one of the biggest risks is misunderstandings, and we all know about this one. I mean, I don't think there's anyone in this world who didn't participate in a meeting or talk to some other person and did not miscommunicate or got miscommunicated towards. Why? Because we tend to interpret small signals from the verbal communication of other people, and aside from that, we also need body language to decipher whatever people want to say. We look them in the eye, we look at their glance, and we try and think about, what does this person want to tell me right now? And this is sort of all of this, coupled with our own expectations of what we want to get out of that discussion, out of that conversation, usually ends up with the unmet expectations, either from their side or from our side, coupled with all of those mimics and gestures, and everything gets up messy and ends up being a huge pile of miscommunication and misunderstanding. And that's something we really want to avoid. Each time we talk to other people, we hold meetings. The thing is that people are not necessarily bad, and they're just expressing themselves in an unfortunate manner, which probably is the root cause of why so many miscommunications happen. It's not necessarily the motivation that's wrong, it's the way they do it. And fortunately, all of that can be fixed, and it can be trained, and it can be made better with all sorts of courses and trainings and reading and so on. So it's something that it's easily fixable. Okay. Ill set expectations are another risk of not communicating properly. So if you never say what you actually want to say in a discussion, and you imply it in an indirect way, what ends up happening is that you're not actually communicating to to the other person what you want. You leave it to their imagination, and what ends up happening is that the other person thinks about what you want, thinks about what they want, and is probably going to negotiate some sort of outcome for you and for her or him that's best suited for them, not necessarily what you want. And in order to avoid that, it's good to set up the rules of engagement from the beginning, from the very, very beginning. So let's say you, for example, the most classic example for this is people wanting to get promoted but not saying anything about it. So this is actually quite common in a lot of companies, and this is mostly because when we're in school, and I don't know, we're small, or not necessarily in school, but when we're small, generally what happens is that our parents are usually frowning upon the fact that we want something which is more. Usually we want something more, and they end up telling us things like, you should be more careful about what you want, think about other people and how little they have. And this is actually something which is really, really toxic to everybody involved, because, and to all the kids, because what ends up happening is you get raised with this picture in your head that you shouldn't be wanting too many things, because it's not okay to want that many things due to the fact that other people have less than you. And that is toxic for you and your growth and your development as well in the long run. Why? Well, it's quite simple. Say you're really good at leading other people, and say you like helping people, you're most likely going to run into positions which are generally geared towards coaching, towards guiding people, and so on. If you're not helped by your parents to go into some direction that is similar to that, and if you're not self-aware enough to figure out this is what you want and this is what you're good at, most likely you're gonna miss out on a lot of good and creative opportunities for yourself, as well as train others, which is something, if you want to do, is absolutely cool. And leading other people, it's that usually happens because you're not okay with yourself, with wanting more. You sort of punish yourself for, okay, I want this, but on the other hand, what will other people think? They're gonna think, oh, this guy is so eager beaver, he wants to get this position so bad. The problem is you sort of expect people to look at you, to look at your work, to compare it between other people and say, wow, this guy is doing amazing. I should really friggin' promote this guy into a better position because he's doing such an amazing job. But think about it like this. Most companies have people in management positions which are really, really busy doing other stuff, which is not necessarily more or less important than what you do, but they're actually as busy as you are. And most of them won't really have the time to sort of look at you in this godlike fashion and see how well you're doing. They're most of the time they're relying on other people's reports. They're relying on your input, which is why one of the biggest tips I can give you is to assert yourself if you want to communicate better with other people. Assertion leads to, first of all, it leads to a better image about yourself from your point of view, as well as from the other people, and it sort of improves your way of communication along your sort of your growth path. That's really, really important in the long run for absolutely anyone. It doesn't matter if you're a CEO, if you're a CTO, if you're a regular Joe like me. It doesn't matter. Good communication is absolutely important. First of all, for mitigating risks, and second of all, for, I don't know, bettering your relationship with the people around you. I think that's the biggest thing you're gonna get out of this, from my own point of view. Okay. What other risks are involved with not communicating properly? Let's see. Well, there's the blame games. And these ones are actually super, super freaking common in any company you've been around. Most likely you've had colleagues that are like, okay, whose fault it is that this thing isn't working? Well, it's mine. What happened? Like, why didn't you do this commit? Well, what's going on? And if you don't, the usually what happens is that people go at each other's throats because they assume the other person went in for a personal jab. And it's not necessarily always the case. Sometimes it's just a simple question like, okay, what happened? Can you help me out with some information? Let's see if we can let's see what the hell happened here. We want to fix this thing. However, other people tend to instead focus not necessarily on fixing on the problem, but instead finding who's responsible. And a lot of times this is not so much this is not as important as fixing the actual problem, because just look at this potential scenario. Say something broke into your company. For example, say one of the servers broke down because someone got lazy and just forgot to, I don't know, close the air conditioning in the server room for a while, and then forgot to turn it back on. What's more important to you, going and finding out who did that thing, or actually going and fixing the problem itself so that other people won't have to suffer? Usually what's happening is, let's fix this problem first and then find out who or why is who is responsible and what happened. And it's better to actually start from a mindset that is, maybe you did this by accident. I don't think you had an ill intent. Rather, I think it was an accident. Let's see how we can mitigate this in the future. Instead of being punitive and saying, "Oh, this guy, so he fucked up. We need to actually cancel him, or actually give him a written notice or something else." No, that's just bad. That's the worst type of way to solve this problem. Shunning people, putting them on the spot, not trying to fix the problem in a constructive way. That's kind of the whole thing here. And that's another thing of another risk of not communicating properly. And it's something which is easily fixable if everybody involved into this conversation that usually takes place when something goes wrong does not go and attack other people in a personal fashion, or they don't attack the person, they attack the problem itself, which is trying to move focus from personal towards the impersonal. This way, you're not going to create enemies, you're not going to create dissent between people, and generally speaking, it's going to create a sort of a more relaxed atmosphere between people, and it's going to help them focus towards problems rather than people, in a way, you know. Okay, so having talked about the risks involved into bad communication, so what the problems that good communication fixes, and why communication is so important for us, let's talk a little bit about how we can communicate better in projects, across teams, between ourselves, and so on. One of the things that I learned in a seminar while I was being trained by one of my ex-employers was a training that was called assertion, or it not necessarily called assertion. It revolved around assertion. First of all, what is assertion? It's being confident and making a forceful statement of fact or belief about yourself or something that you are really passionate about. That being said, how does that transpire or transpose into our day-to-day lives? Well, this is an issue for me. I would like to fix this. How can we do this? This is sort of the approach. It's sort of an approach that focuses towards or focuses on the problem. It sort of highlights the problem, and it makes you a spokesperson for your own self. Sort of. Okay, that sounded a bit odd. I know. Let me just think about how I can better express that. You think about yourself and what your main problems are. Just try to note them down. Try to write them on a piece of paper and don't think about how they make you not necessarily how they make you feel, but what you think about them. So, for example, I'm not happy about my current salary, and this is distracting me from my day-to-day job. Obviously, one of the objectives of the employer is to raise is for you to not to be distracted, which means that in order for you not to be distracted, you need to get a pay rise to no longer be distracted and focus more towards what you are doing. This is a good enough example of assertion in this case. Or let's say you think that you deserve to be promoted into another position, but you're really secretly hoping that everybody else will notice, and so on and so forth. Instead of noticing, you actually go and talk to the managers involved and tell them, guys, this is what I think I'm really good at. I would like to focus next on this and this and this, because I think this is what I want going forward in terms of career. How can we make this happen? Is it something that you guys could help me with? And if so, how can we make this happen? This is another example of being assertive in a specific situation that bothers you, and you don't want to keep it under wraps, and you don't want to sort of hide it under the blankets. You want to address it in the open and sort of make it clear for everybody that this is a problem for you and you need to have this addressed in order to be okay. That's one of the things. Strength usually derives from being able to speak up when there is a problem, and this is another good thing about assertion. It builds up your sort of internal strength, mental strength about yourself. It also means that if you're going to be assertive, you don't have to be rude. That's a very, very important, and we need to actually be super, super careful about how we express ourselves so that we don't sound rude and we don't sound like total a-holes. So be nice, but be firm in a way. Try to set a tone that is sort of not is taken seriously, but it's not being really threatening, if you know what I mean. It's that sort of tone that you want to adopt in order to be assertive. That's kind of the idea here. Okay. Moving forward, another tip I could give you in better communication would be to remove the ego. Say you're in a conversation and you and another of your colleagues are debating an idea. In most situations, what ends up happening is that either one of you is going to try and push for his own idea, and that's fine, and it's normal. It happens to absolutely every one of us, and it's not something I would not expect to happen, nor for anyone. The only discussion is how you go about this. Like, try to think about okay, you're not the most important in the room. The other person isn't the most important in the room. You are there to fix a problem. The actual problem is the most important thing in the room, and that's what you guys should be focused on. It's like having a team, and instead of each of them focusing on their individual goals, you as a team leader communicate to them all that you guys are part of the same team. We're here to deliver excellence. Let's put our minds together and see how we can find a better solution for this, instead of trying to rip each other apart. because we're both in this together. We're gonna be if we're all going down, I'm going down with you guys, and I'm going to support you and try to help you so that you can find the best solution for this problem that we have. And besides that, when I'm also talking about removing the ego, I'm also talking about not lying to yourself when you're looking for an outcome. So try to be realistic about it. So don't look at the discussion and think about it in terms of what you would like to get out of it, but think about it what realistically could happen in that discussion. So, for example, when you're negotiating if a feature gets implemented or not, don't think about what you want to have out of that discussion. For example, say you want to work less, you don't want to add like 5 hours extra to your work time just because someone doesn't want to implement some sort of button or something. This is just an example. Try to tell the other person, okay dude, I understand your problem. You don't want to do this thing because it's a lot of time for you. Let's see how we can find a solution that fits us both in a good way, so that I don't have to work too much, and you, because I understand you got kids, I got kids, you might want to go home earlier today. The same goes for me. Like let's work together and find a better solution for this, instead of trying to pull the string to either of the ends, like from towards my end or yours. Like let's just try if we can see and find something that fits us both in the middle. How about that? And that's sort of the art of negotiation and of actually good communication in a lot of teams, at least from my point of view. Anyways, next up, another tip I could probably give with regards to good communication is to have a mindset that preconditions you to think that everybody is okay. So everybody's inherently okay in a team. I don't think it's not about me. Sorry. I don't think there's anyone who's actually inherently evil. Their actions are evil. It's a difference between trying to move and attribute actions to people and label people as being evil, instead of using the actions and saying this person is okay, what they're doing is not okay. It's a huge difference between putting that person's 3 actions and making it a label for that person, instead of, I know, trying to find the good in that person and then trying to relate to that good and bring that good to light, so that you can actually find a way to negotiate with that person with that good in mind, in a way. And I'm not sure if that sort of makes sense to you. And the thing is, each person has something to contribute when they are working in a larger team. And this is something you need to keep in mind. You need to have an open mind about people around you. There's nobody who's sort of there because they're stupid. They're just shortcutting the system or something. That's false. That's not the case. If it happens, okay, whatever. I might not be the perfect person to talk about this, or I might not know everyone into your team, for example. But I do think that each of that person has something to contribute when you're trying to debunk a problem or fix something or find a solution, whatever it is that you guys are doing. So I'm pretty sure each person has a little something to contribute. And here's one of the biggest secrets of being inclusive with all of the people in your team. Let them feel like they contributed to the overall success of the team. Don't try and highlight and bring up people who are more important than others, and so that others get downplayed. Make sure each of them has a voice. Make sure each of them has a small contribution, so they have a small victory. People really love victories. So whenever you give them a small victory, for example, and make them feel excited about having helped you fix something, they'll be really passionate about being helpful the next time. The reason why is because people inherently are okay and just want to be helpful, and are getting hired in companies because they want to do good. What ends up happening usually is that they get lost in a lot of side projects or buried between deep layers of either neglect or managers who just ignore them completely. And that's why this is why good communication and being attentive towards the people in the room is so important. To be able to read and tell, okay, this person is kind of bored, I should probably get them involved into the discussion, because I don't want them to feel left out, so that they can continue contributing to the team in a positive way. Arguments, as I said before, should be about the idea, not the person. So whenever you're disputing an idea, try to keep the idea in mind, and don't try to run off and say, oh, this idea is stupid. There are no stupid ideas, especially when you're exploring solutions for a potential issue. There's no stupid ideas. No, just note them all. Or, if you will, have a separate brainstorming session for bad ideas, and just like let people rip it out and come out with the most outlandish things they can think of, and note them down. It's still communication. It's still good for everybody, because it sort of takes out the crap and leaves out just the important stuff that you wanted to focus on. That this is optional, in my opinion. Anyways, okay, moving on. Another tip is setting up the expectations with regards to the motivation of each party that's involved in communication. What do I want to get out of this, and what do they want to get out of this as well? So dialogue comes first by making sure that the other person is communicating exactly what they want, as well as you are. And whenever you guys are talking, you're basically negotiating the terms of what each of you wants to get out of that discussion, and you sort of get to this understanding, sort of like a middle point, if you will. That's something we actually talked about a bit earlier in the podcast, if you recall. Next, is something you can do is focus on commonalities, not the differences. So, as I said earlier, instead of, I don't know, focusing on what makes you different, say someone is being really difficult in a conversation, and he's being really dominant, and you really want to you really want to encourage him to step down a bit and give some room to the rest of the people who are participating into the discussion. Try to tell him or actually try to see what you have in common with that person if he's being difficult, and tell him, okay, look, we both want to get this outcome out of this discussion. Can we agree on this? Can we move forward with the discussion, even though we might not agree on this and this and this? Because in the end, we both want the same thing. We both want the best for the team. We both want the best for the company. We both want the best solution for this problem. Let's focus on focus on moving forward, instead of being stuck here in a discussion that does not end up anywhere. Can we agree on that? And by doing this, you sort of try to refocus people on the actual problem at hand, and on the commonalities that you guys have, instead of the differences, and especially the difference of opinion. This is something which is going to be really, really common in a lot of situations, especially in larger companies, when there's a lot of teams that are coming together and discussing options for what have you, like features, code, design, what have you. So it's something that's going to pop up, and being able to focus on commonalities instead of differences is going to be really, really helpful in that situation. At least that's what I think. You should really try it out and see if it works for you, and drop a comment if you want below, and let me know how it worked, how it worked for you, um, in your situation. Okay, moving on. Another tip I could probably give is negotiation, and this is actually something which sums up all of the things I said earlier about removing the ego, everybody being okay, and so on and so forth. This is sort of like the actual secret sauce of communication is being able to negotiate. Negotiation, especially in larger teams, is absolutely vital. If you cannot negotiate something, you're doing something wrong. Why? Because there's always going to be someone who's going to be left out of this out of the discussion, or out of the problem, if you will. They're not going to be contribute. They're going to be miserable, and in a way, it's like having a bowl of small grains of sand that are just gonna accumulate. At some point, the bowl is going to fill up with sand, and that is when people are going to say, okay, for me this company is not okay because it does not let me contribute with my own thoughts, with my own good ideas to the solutions of the problems. They don't let me speak up. I don't feel safe here in terms of fostering a collaborative environment. I think I don't have anything to belong here. This is usually what happens when negotiation does not take place, and people are just being like forgotten somewhere. They're just not important at all. And communication does not exist because everybody's too busy. They're running around. They're having their own thing, and like for example, designers don't talk to developers. They team up and sort of build their own gangs and so on. You need to have cross-functional discussions and cross-team discussions to be able to make people understand that they're all serving a good. All of them want to have their thing done. For example, most situations have, when we're talking about developers versus designers, what happens is that a lot of developers say, these designers, they're so lazy, they just want to sit around and not do anything all day. Or designers say, these coders they only get their own jokes, they only do their thing, they just want to write as little code as possible and get the most outcome, which is not necessarily true in either situation. So all of us just want to streamline our lives in a way. We all want to make our lives easier, and that's the thing that brings us all together. If we can agree on that, it's easy going forward because we know what we have in common. Let's look at the differences and see how we can turn them into advantages, or solve those problems that arise from those differences. That's really important. Another really important tip from my point of view is being empathic and having a sort of a critical mindset. And what I mean by that is, whenever you're being part of a conversation or you're listening in and what the other person is saying, just be empathic about the other person, and think, if you were in their shoes, what would you think? What would you feel? Instead of judging them for what you think is going on, try to picture them in your head, in their shoes, and see what they think, what they feel, and so on. That gives you a good idea about what they're going through, and it helps you better understand them and their needs. When you understand them and their needs, it's actually easier to communicate with that person, because you know the proper channel of communication, you know their objectives, or you actually have an intuition towards what their objectives are. If you want to actually be 100% sure, you can actually ask them straight away and say, okay, let me get this straight. Is this something that you are thinking of? Because I was thinking that due to the fact that this and this and this most likely means that this and this. Is this true? Is this something that you're going through? Is this something that you want? And the other part being critical thinking, in the sense of try to when you're talking about a solution to a problem and you're talking about finding the best one, try to be critical and think both destructively and constructively. And by that I mean be the devil's advocate. Being the devil's advocate, both as a designer, as a developer, as a basically anything you will, means you get to put yourself in the shoes of the other person, or actually find out what they think and see how that affects you in the end. Is it Could there be something that benefits you? Is there something that is going to impact your work when they're is something that you do going to impact their work? And see and talk about this thing and put it in the open. For example, if you're thinking about one design adding too much scope to a particular developer, tell them like, dude, I think this design could be awesome, but I'm wondering if it doesn't add too much scope to your work, or too much work. Is it too much work for you? Is it okay like how I proposed it, or do you want to like scale it down because it's too much work for you? What do you think? And instead of being, oh, I think this thing is very easy to implement, I think it's going to no longer it's not going to be a problem for you, you're trying to negotiate, you're trying to understand the other person, you're trying to see their point of view, and in the end you're going to end up understanding the other person way better and appropriating sort of their logical patterns and incorporating them into your own. And each time you're going to come up with a solution, you're going to think, but what does this person think? Last time he said this and this and this. Okay, let me just ask him what he wants. And asking is such a simple thing. We a lot of the times, even I have this problem. I tend to overthink so much just because I'm doing this part of critical thinking, and a lot of times it actually bogs you down, because what ends up happening is you find the perfect solution and both or the perfect excuse all at the same time. And by that I mean, okay, I have a good enough argument to do this, but I have a good enough argument not to do this. So what the hell am I doing here? It's sort of like a deadlock, you know. That's sort of the problem. And in order to solve that thing, you need to talk with the other person and try to find us negotiate the best solution together. Like it's a team effort. You should talk to them and find a solution together rather than separately, if you will. That's a good tip from my point of view. And lastly, I think one of the other really important tips I could give with regards to creating good communication is creating psychological safety in the work environment. And this is actually really important. Psychological safety creates collaboration and communication. It helps people discuss openly. It invites people to share their opinions. It excludes trolling. It includes out of the box thinking, mostly because when you in large companies, what ends up happening when you have a meeting, all sorts of people get around, especially if you have teams which are sort of more fresh and are all 20 something, 30 something. There's going to be inherently a lot of trolls, and this is something that I can guarantee to you. Someone is going to be there and just try and troll the whole meeting into the ground because they feel like they're left out. They feel like they want to lighten up the atmosphere. They want some attention, whatever. It doesn't matter why. But they're always going to try and troll you. And you should always try to have someone delegated as a sort of meeting person who or not necessarily the spokesperson, a mediator, if you will, that always keeps the agenda of the meeting, and preferably also has and shares meeting minutes after the meeting concludes with absolutely everybody involved, but who also moderates it in the sense that whenever something like this happens and someone starts trolling and say, okay, that was funny, but let's just try and get back to why we're here. We don't want to waste anyone's time. We all want to get back to work. We don't want to stay overtime. We just want to get everything done today, which is really, really important. Try to enforce the idea that while we want to find a solution and possibly make it fun, we're also here for a reason. We're not here to waste time. This is actually really, really important whenever you have meetings, because meetings tend to drag out over time, and that's the most annoying thing in the world for both the people that are taking part from production as well as management. That's something clear. That's not something that is not true. Like, just look at your own companies and think about every meeting you've been through. Was it or wasn't it like that? Just ask yourself. And if you want to, also comment below and let me know what you think. Try to have clarifying question rounds. So whenever you feel like you're bogged down into a particular discussion, try to ask a lot of questions, and especially don't make fun of people for asking questions. This is really, really important. Like, there's no stupid questions when you're part of a discussion. Let people ask questions. Being informed is really, really okay. And properly understanding the problem, the topic at hand, whatever is being discussed, it's important. Don't make fun of people for asking questions. This is stupid. It's always been stupid from starting of school, and continues to be stupid now between colleagues as well. There's no stupid questions. Just let people ask questions. Just let them be informed, whatever they want. Of course, if you feel like the question heads towards a trolling area, try and curb it, and don't encourage it further. But let people ask questions. If they feel that they don't understand something well enough, they're probably going to not give you a good enough solution for that particular problem. Just let them ask questions. It's fine. It's absolutely okay. And also, like, use generative ideas rather than finding a great solution to cut down time. And by this I mean, don't try to find the perfect solution. Try to find several smaller potential solutions and just slowly zero in onto the perfect solution, so that each person sort of has a little small input into this and tries to contribute to finding the proper solution. That's the best way to involve everybody in the team and make sure that the final solution that gets picked is one everybody agrees with. Because most of the times people are just not going to agree with a single solution because they have their best in mind. They want to find the best solution. They want to find the best outcome and so on. Sometimes it's just not possible. Sometimes you can't find the best solution. You have a good enough solution and then you move forward. Why? Because the end goal is more important than having the best solution sometimes. That's the thing. Okay, let's look at some examples of, actually no, let's discuss about examples of good communications. What are some of the some good examples of communication that you've come across? If you will, please let me know by commenting below and tell me some of your own experience with this, and especially tell me what you think about what good communication looks like for you. How would you imagine that good communication takes place? Is it part of what I just said earlier? Is it different? What is it to you? Because for each person, a specific concept represents or unfolds in a different way, which is why I wanted to build this community in the first place, and let people express their opinions with regards to certain topics. For example, this one being a really, really important one, I think it's good to actually know what you feel about this, what your general impression is. So please write your comments below and let me know. I'm really keen on seeing your comments and knowing your thoughts, to be honest. And now, in closing, I would like to recommend some reading materials to you. Um, these are some books that I think are really, really important for both communication as well as personal development, negotiation. They're good on a lot of areas, both personal as well as professional, I think. And some of them have actually helped others as well as myself included to be better at communicating with other people. Obviously, my problem is not necessarily um, communication, but actually speech, because my language is not necessarily English language. I'm not a native English language speaker, and a lot of the issues that I have are with regards to the fact that I'm trying to build up all of my ideas as I go along, and being a non-native English speaker takes a lot more effort and a lot more time than it does for a native English speaker. And this is why everything sounds so jumbly, or my ideas are sometimes long when I express myself, and sometimes I express myself in a weird way, or I stumble when I talk. This is why. It's not something else. This is the main reason. Anyways, getting back to the topic at hand. Managing Conflict: A Practical Guide to Resolution in the Workplace by David Little. It's really, really it's a really good book. I highly recommend it in respects of managing conflicts. I think it's going to help you a lot to better manage your conflicts with other people, as well as perhaps inner conflicts as well. I don't know. That's sort of up to you. I'm Okay, You're Okay by Thomas Harris. This is actually one of those books that deals with transactional psychology, and is what I just said about earlier, about putting the focus not necessarily on the person, but on the actions of the person. If the person has acted bad, it's their actions that are bad. It's not the person who's bad. You don't necessarily identify with your actions. You are a separate individual. That's the thing here. Another great book that I could recommend you is Games People Play by Eric Byrne. The Process Therapy Model: The 6 Personality Types with Adaptations by Taby Collar. This is actually a book that is really, really cool, and I've been to one of those process communication model trainings held by one of my former employees. I really loved it, and that particular process communication model is really helpful if you're trying to build a team that meshes well together. I highly recommend reading it, as well as getting trained by in that PCM training. I think it's amazing, and I think if you have the time and the financials, you definitely should do it. There's no questions asked. Like, it's one of those really, really cool trainings. You have to take part. It's going to tell you a lot about yourself, as well as try to help you to communicate better with the people around you. So highly recommend that thing, along with the book, by the way. Another book I recommend is Understand to be Understood by Gerald Collignon. Gérard Collignon. And last but not least, No Hard Feelings, The Secret Power of Embracing Emotions at Work by Liz Foslian and Molly West Duffy. This last book is something interesting. This last book is what I'm reading right now, and I see a lot of connections with some of the other books, as well as some own personal remarks I've seen throughout the years while working, and it really helped me to be okay with myself, as weird as that sounds, as well as being more forgiving in a way, because I've always been very strict with myself. I've seen myself in a light that's not necessarily the greatest throughout time, and this book is helping me to be okay with the fact that I'm not necessarily perfect all the time, and it's fine to not be perfect all the time. It's fine to make mistakes. It's fine to accept them, and to not be hard with yourself. That's the biggest point that I'm taking out of this book, as well as, I don't know, communication with other people, and how to be better in as a human. As stupid as that sounds, I really think it's important to read this book. I don't know if I could capture what it represents in a proper fashion. It's a really awesome book, and I think it's a book that is good for employees as well as bosses. For employees, it's good because it I think it's going to detention them in a way, and for bosses, it's good because it puts them into the mindset of an employee, not of that of a boss, of that who is giving the orders, but that of a person who's taking the orders in this situation. So please read these books if you have the time. I think they're amazing, and I think you're definitely going to like them, and they're going to rattle your cage. That being said, I really want to thank you for sticking around for about 57 minutes of my first ever podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was useful to you, and I really want to apologize for all the ramblings where I've rambled. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to subscribe, please subscribe. There's no pressure in doing that. And if you feel like contributing something, anything, comment, please let me know, and comment down in the section below. I hope you have an amazing rest of the week, or a start of the week, whatever the case may be, and hope to see you around next time into the next podcast episode. Okay then.